the property that the county is surplusing and wants to build affordable housing on. With me here is our Assistant County Administrator and Director of Facilities, Isami Ayala Colazo. She brought her team, Eric McClellan and Perfi Bogata. They'll be explaining to you what is going on with that 6.37 acres outside of the gates, what the county plans to do, but we also want to hear your questions and your concerns. So let Isami give a presentation, and there will be opportunities for questions and expressions of concern. So Isami?
Thank you, Niels. Good morning, everyone. Thank you. Let me start the conversation by saying thank you. Thank you for giving us an opportunity to be here with you today. First time visiting this facility. I hope it will not be the last one. So last time, yeah? Understood, but let's go through the presentation and let's see where the conversation ends after we go through it. A few things that I want to share with you before we truly start. Everything that you will see here today will be made available in a web page. So you're welcome to take photos if you like, but at the end, you're going to have a link, and that's the one slide that I will recommend you take a photo of so that you can go visit the web page and get a copy of the presentation. At the end of today's meeting, I will also send a copy of the PDF to Donald. So if he wants to share it and distribute it, he can do so as well. Before I take a deep dive into the presentation, as Neil stated, I am the Facilities Development and Operations Director. I am also an Assistant County Administrator. With my FDO role, facilities role, one of my responsibilities is precisely overseeing the developments that the county pursues. With me today are two colleagues, Eric McClellan, he is our Director of Strategic Planning. Anything that has to do with planning general government facilities and developments like a housing development falls under Eric's purview. And then Pervi Bugaita is the Director of Property and Real Estate Management. She is the one person within the county that oversees every county-owned property. She is, as I call her, our real estate agent, okay? So with that in mind, we're here today to talk about 5741 Okeechobee Boulevard. That's the vacant property that is close to the Okeechobee Branch Library. And let me share with you a little bit of background as to why we're here and background as to the property. This is a parcel that is about 6.3 acres. It was acquired by the county in 2002. As I shared before, it's next to the library, and since it was acquired, it has remained vacant. In 2023, there were some changes to state law, and those changes came through what you have probably heard is called the Live Local Act, okay? That act, when it was approved, required all county governments to develop a list of property that could be made available to fulfill housing needs, okay? So it was a requirement that we needed to meet before a deadline, and that deadline was October. So in making sure the county will remain compliant with the requirements of SB 102, we as staff were required to develop that list. What did we do? In order to be able to put together an inventory, we went through what we call county-owned real estate, CORE. And that core list, just so that you have an idea of how much property the county owns, has about 2,600 PCNs, parcel control numbers, property control numbers. So that tells us individual pieces, parcels throughout the county that are county-owned. Out of those 2,600, we come through them and filter that list and returned to the board in September 2023 with an overview that basically said, out of the 2,600, about 179 are vacant, meaning to say they do not have development on them. And out of the 129, there was only one parcel that did not have an assigned use. And the concept of not having an assigned use is a key concept, right? Because if it was a parcel that the county had with an assigned use, it will not make it to the list. So with that information in mind, or at hand, right, after we completed our review, we went back to the board and told the board, here is the requirement per state law, here is the analysis we have done, and here is the result of our analysis. Given that we are required to make sure we include the property as available property, if it is going to be developed, then board, we recommend that it be set aside for housing, affordable or workforce housing. And in bringing that recommendation forward to the Board of County Commissioners, we included a set of additional recommendations, right? So if the board were to decide that this is what they would like staff to pursue, we recommended that several conditions be attached to it, right? And
Is this a done deal already?
no, sir. And if you bear with us for, I'm going to say like 10 minutes, we're going to make it there. We are actually here today. I'm going to give you the punchline first, so to speak, right? But why are we here? Because we received very clear direction from the Board of County Commissioners as to what were the steps that we needed to pursue and complete. And one of those steps was to come meet with the community. And you actually are going to see that we're just trying to give you background information so that when we get to the point where we will shut up and listen, you have all the information available. So give you my word, we're in about 10 minutes. We're going to cover what we have done, where we are, and what the next steps are. And then it will be an open floor. So with that said, conditions that we recommended and were discussed during the board meeting in September 2023, that a full due diligence report be conducted, and that has been done, and Eric shortly will walk you through what that due diligence analysis found and the results, that there will be no driveway connection to the site from West Drive, that development of senior affordable or workforce housing, be it rental or ownership, be the assigned use, and then you have the definitions of what workforce is and what affordable is. That did restrictions were placed on the property so that it could not be used for something else. We don't want to go through a development where the county disposes of the property for a given use, and then 30 years down the road, whomever acquired the property or is using the property ends up doing something different. We want to make sure that the conditions the county imposes remain into the future. That because we were recommending it be used for housing, that if a developer came and was awarded a competitive process, that developer will not be allowed what I'm going to call to double count, right? Meaning to say, many developers have an obligation under other county requirements to provide a given number of workforce housing units elsewhere to continue with other projects. And we didn't want them to use this property to fulfill those requirements that they are obligated to based on other type of development orders. And that monetary consideration for disposition of the property will be required. So if the county is going to make this available, it will need to be for housing, and there are a set of conditions to be met. We took all that to the Board of County Commissioners, and the Board of County Commissioners said, yes, you can proceed to include the property on the inventory list so that we comply with statutory requirements, right? But if you're going to do so, we want you to comply with all the conditions you have recommended. And on top of that, we want you to go back to that surrounding community before you put anything on the street, and that goes back to answer your question. We want you to get their input. We want to hear what they want to say. We want to take that into consideration to the next steps. So make sure you complete all that before you move forward. So that's why we are here. We are in the process of fulfilling the board direction we received. After we gather information today, what follows? We take the information you will provide us, and then we determine the next step towards an RFP, towards returning to the board. That's part of the analysis we're doing right now. And with that in mind, and in the background, I'm gonna leave the floor to my colleague, Eric McClellan. He will give you an overview of the results of the due diligence report, which we received, and will be made available as well on the website that you're going to see at the end of the presentation. Eric?
Thank you very much, Esme. Good morning, everyone. Again, my name is Eric McClellan. I serve as the Director of Strategic Planning for the county's Facilities Development and Operations Department. And in that capacity, some of my program responsibilities include regulatory compliance, project representation, and public outreach, and hence why I'm the one delivering this part of our presentation. So the due diligence report and study that Isami mentioned. First and foremost, the due diligence is basically a common term in the development and real estate industry. It's a very high-level review of the likely land development regulations that are going to apply to any development proposal. So that was the objective. We contracted with a local planning and landscape architecture firm, Cutler and Herring Landscape Architecture. They're based out of Jupiter. They're the ones that completed the study for us. Without leaving you in suspense, I will tell you they found no fatal flaws for a residential development program on this property, and I want to walk you through why they came to that conclusion. First, they identified the existing zoning of the property is general commercial. As you can imagine, a residential development and a commercial zoning designation aren't necessarily congruent or compatible. So there would need to be a rezoning relying upon the existing site's land use designation, with one exception, and Isami mentioned the Live Local Act. If a developer were to come in and want to exercise that, they would not necessarily have to rezone or go through any public process. They would receive an administrative level approval to proceed into permits. In terms of the future land use designation of the property, this is in the county's comprehensive plan, the long-term land use vision. It has two designations. One is commercial high, and that explains why it has a commercial zoning at present, but it also has an underlying residential 8 units per acre. And with that underlying residential designation, that's what would allow someone to rezone the property to a residential district and still be in keeping with the comprehensive plan land use designation.
So how many units is that?
Gonna run you right through that. Great question, great foreshadowing. One thing that they identified as a residential use of the property under county regulations would be deemed compatible. As you can imagine, Century Village is residential. Putting a residential right next door, residential to residential, is compatible. It's not industrial. It's not very high intense commercial. So I think that's a fairly basic principle in land use planning. Access. They found that there are rights along the parallel service road on Okeechobee Boulevard where the property would gain access from. Isami mentioned we know there would be concerns using West Drive. We're not going to encourage that. And we have the ability through our competitive solicitation to steer that and make sure that doesn't happen. Also, vegetation on the site was determined to be fairly sparse. There are some trees on the site. Most of them are non-natives. And under county regulations, you are required to remove non-native or invasive vegetation species when you develop. Any other vegetation that is native and natural will have to be addressed through a site planning process. You can also see no protected species were observed when a site inspection was done. No gopher tortoises, no observed migratory birds, things of that nature. Obviously, that'll have to be studied again come time for development to be permitted and proceed if that occurs. But that is the current state of the property. It was also found the site is located within a wellfield protection zone, one of the least restrictive, however, and that does not prohibit a residential development of the property. It would impede things like industrial, a laundromat, things that could have some environmental impact if anything were to get into the soils or the groundwater. Clearly, that's not the case when you're talking about residential use. Traffic. Everybody loves traffic. How many traffic engineers do I have in the room? None. I'm not one either, so I won't pretend to be. But the traffic evaluation that was done assumed the maximum number of units county regulations would allow, and it assumed the driveway connection to that parallel service road, not to West Drive. And based upon those conditions, it did find that a project could meet the county's traffic performance standards, which is the ordinance governing traffic impact in Palm Beach County. As far as other infrastructure, water, sewer, electric, drainage, it was also found that all those provisions are in place or can be made available to support a residential development program. So now to get into, well, one last thing. FEMA, your flood zone, it's in Zone X, which is really a no risk, low risk zone. So there really is no concerns here with flooding or inundation. Any development will have to have a drainage system in place, fully engineered and permitted, but just from a basic floodplain management issue, it's not in a zone that would be cause for concern. Now we get into some unit counts. And they laid out several different development scenarios or paths that a developer could follow under the county's land development codes. One of those is utilizing what's known as the Workforce Housing Program. It's a program that is incentivized in the county due to the crucial need for affordable and workforce housing. With this scenario, you would continue to use that existing land use designation, the 8 units an acre. You would rezone it to a residential district that is compatible with the HR 8 land use. And under this scenario, the maximum number of units that would allow on the property would be 111. Again, that is a maximum. It's not a guarantee. It's not an entitlement. It's just a maximum permissible number of units. One other option would be to do a land use amendment, change that HR 8 to something higher. 12 would be the next category up, and that is the highest that Palm Beach County has. Just a note there, Century Village is actually HR 18. 18 units to the acre, a land use that's since been retired by the county. But here you're grandfathered, it's vested, you're built to that. So just a piece of trivia in case it ever comes up. So with a land use amendment to a higher density and a rezoning, the maximum unit count would then be 156 units. Again, not an entitlement, not a guarantee, it's just a regulatory cap that could not be exceeded. We're going to have questions and answers at the end, and I promise you we will give you all the, we don't have anywhere to go after this. Let me get to that at the end, because not an architect, not a residential developer, don't have any plans I can show you. This is all high-level due diligence information. So next we have the affordable housing program, which if they were to use that incentive, they could yield a maximum of 120 units. And lastly, the Live Local Act that ISME mentioned. If they were to exercise that option, not go through any kind of public process, take care of it all administratively, the maximum count would be 95 units. So from a regulatory standpoint, we're talking about a maximum intensity of development somewhere between 95 and 156 units. Some conclusions on the due diligence. First, it is just a first step in a development process. It's something a developer would do as a proprietary measure. What can they expect to encounter going through the regulatory process before they invest in putting an entire package together, the entire application with a team of multiple disciplinary individuals. So that's what it is. It's a first step. It's not a conclusion. It's not final. It's not permitting anything. It's just information. So you ask about how many units. Well, that all depends when you get into a site planning process. Even though the regulations might allow you, say, 156 units, until you know your building footprint, you know the height limitations, you know the size of the drainage area you need, you know the size of the parking lot, and you can fit it all into the boundaries, you're not going to know. That's why I say it is a maximum number. Also, community engagement. ISME mentioned we are going to be competitively soliciting for a development partner, someone who would be interested in delivering workforce affordable housing on the property. Through that process, we can actually obligate them to continue the dialogue, and I would assume we would do that. I would assume everybody in here would be interested in that. You want to see the architecture. You want to see what it looks like. That would be part of the obligations if we were to find a partner to deliver the project. Now we get to the community input and the open discussion. So before we turn the floor over, a little bit of housekeeping, rules of engagement. You guys have been a great audience so far, have no doubt that's going to continue. We're just here to provide information. We're making no decisions today. We'll go back to the Board of County Commissioners and give them a report of what we heard, the information we shared. So please continue to be civil. You know, we're all friends and neighbors. We all live together in the community. So keep everybody in mind as you make your comments. We like to limit speaking to 3 minutes each if we can. There's no need to filibuster. Again, we're not here today to make any decision. We're staff. We're just giving information and taking information. And finally, if we have answers to your questions, we will answer them here on the floor on the spot. If we don't, we'll follow up, we'll post it to the website, we'll make sure you get that information. This is essentially what we wanted to pose to you guys to get your feedback. These are the fundamental questions we're really here to hear about. First, what's the sentiment regarding the proposed use? The residential, workforce, affordable, senior. What kind of development program would you be interested in? Next, what conditions and limitations regarding the development are of interest to the community? I think I've already heard architecture. You want to see what it looks like. You want good architecture. And then what concepts would the community like for the county staff to consider while developing the RFP, the solicitation? What are some of the terms, the expectations, things that this community would want to see us obligate a partner to do through the development process? Photo op. Ismi mentioned there's a slide where if you want to take a photo, it's probably the best opportunity of the whole presentation to do so. This is the website where we will be posting this exact presentation to and any other information. Ismi committed to exchange it with a representative here of the property, so this whole presentation will also be made available in that format. We've also got personal information there for Purvi Bogaita, the Director of Real Estate Management. She will be the lead in developing the solicitation, the actual RFP document, and the whole process that goes into selecting a partner through that competitive process. With that, we're done. Yes, I'm going to go back to the questions, but this is the part where we're going to turn it over.
I'd like to ask you a question.
Yes, sir.
What is affordable housing? What is it? The people that will enter into the housing development, what are they required to have?
So by definition, speaking strictly from county regulations, and it's at the bottom of the screen, affordable means 80% of the area median income. So you take the household income, the average for this area, our planning division defines the geographic areas.
Give me a hypothetical case.
A household makes $100,000 a year, you can't exceed $80,000 to be considered affordable. 80% of the income of the household.
What would be the average, do you figure?
That I do not know. We don't perform that analysis. That'll be an analysis performed through the regulatory process by the county's planning division.
Something, if I may. Keep in mind, when we talk about affordable and workforce housing, what we're placing is a restriction on the value of the property that we'll put on the market. That's what we're doing. We are the county, right, saying this is the limit at the ceiling cost at which you can sell that property so that it can be afforded by those that have a salary within this range. That's the logic behind it. So your question was, what kind of people? It's not a matter of a person that is receiving, for example, public assistance. You know, it might be your teacher or a PBSO deputy, for example, right?
Will this be rentable or a purchased property?
We actually have both options, and that's part of the things that we want to consider as we're gathering information. So the county has two means of being able to, quote unquote, dispose, right? One option is doing rental and putting an RFP on the street that says, developer, we are making our land available, but it needs to be rental property so that this gets guaranteed into the future. Or it can be affordable or workforce for sale with restrictions so that once a family that is within that range acquires the property remains affordable into the future. Because the other thing we don't want happening and we don't want to encourage is that we go through this process to facilitate units in the affordable workforce housing level, and then 10 years down the road it goes market, and now a property that was $300,000, for example, is being sold at $600,000, which puts it outside the reach of those working families that need it. Okay?
Hello?
Hi, I'm sorry,
Question.
I'll be brief. Is it possible for we as a community to express a preference to the commissioners and to the staff for senior housing? It
Yes.
just seems to me that where this parcel is, there are 2 or 3 medical facilities. You have 2 bus lines going right past it, and it's next to Century Village. It just seems like, to me, common sense. If you're going to put any housing, let it be senior housing.
Thank you.
Yes?
So the
Okay.
answer to that is that's precisely why we're here. We're gathering that input. Sorry. Before we continue, I want to make a procedural disclaimer. We are paying attention. If you see us turning around, we need to take notes, right? So we're not trying to be disrespectful. But we're taking that comment back. It will be part of our staff report when we go back to the Board of County Commissioners. Ma'am?
Okay, thank you. Well, my first question will be, why the hell can't we keep it green, plant some trees, and have a little park? There's so little green area around here, particularly when someone, county or private, is going to develop a huge parcel of land across the street from the fire department. We're talking about more traffic from the library area, more traffic from the other side of the street onto a street that's already highly crowded, dense traffic. You can't get from here to Palm Beach Lakes Boulevard in less than 15 minutes on an average morning. And if we dump more traffic, it's going to be horrendous. Second, I'm not quite sure, I'm not an engineer, but I don't know how you're going to get the people out from that development and avoid the traffic going in and out of the banks, the health facility, the village, the motel, and U-turns from people who are lost, including big trucks and buses. In addition, we have on the other side a huge development, Turtle Bay, which is going to be built. At the same time, I don't know, we'll be choking in the dust, but in any case, we'll have traffic on that side, traffic on this side, more pressure on our water drainage system, which is really going to be challenged. Is this going to be taken into consideration? And it's most important that it is. You don't have to give me answers now, but somewhere along the line, it would be good. Thank you.
Hi. Just two questions. I challenged the impact on the electrical grid, so that's something that I think should take a deep dive on. And secondly, cell phone towers service. There's not enough service now for certain dark areas, and I think that's the cell phone towers as well as the electrical grid. There are several brownouts throughout the year, and that impacts people that work from home. So if there's an additional workforce that will be working from home, it will put a strain on the cell phone tower, the throughput of the internet, and the electrical grid. So those are two things that I'd like to have reviewed.
Okay, thank you. Before we go to the next question, I want to make sure I'm able to take care of a few comments that were made. So number one, regarding why not keep it green, right? That was the start of my presentation. We are going through this entire process because we do have some statutory requirements to meet at the state level, right? So that inventory list needed to be made available for developers to see and know that the county and the dependent districts within the county, by the way, needed to provide information as well, right? So we are going through this process in meeting that statutory requirement. Now, regarding the requests about having a park in that area, right? Let me share with you that one of the things that we recommended to the board as well, and the board told us, yes, keep it in consideration and for inclusion in the RFP, was precisely carving out a portion of the parcel to provide for community-wide uses, right? So you still have a main housing use that is what has been recommended, but we were tasked in drafting that RFP, and that's Purvis' main responsibility, right? To try to carve out a portion of that site for a community-wide use that could benefit Century Village as well. Now, going back to how do we make sure and how do we evaluate traffic and how do we assess the impacts, I want to bring it back to what Eric said before. This is a high-level assessment. We're at the very start of the process. If we move forward through an RFP, the RFP basically what it gives is the set of rules that those developers will need to comply with, right? And when they come to the table, they will put together conceptual drawings, they will do an analysis, they will give us an architectural plan to give us an idea of what is it that they're proposing. Selection is done publicly and competitively, right? Which means there's a panel that sits down, reviews everything that is presented, and can recommend or not recommend. So assume those responses come back and they don't take care of the traffic, of the electrical, of the internet, of the aesthetics, right, of the layout, the county has the ability to say, no, this has not met our requirements. Either we go back again or we follow another path, right? So we are, truth be told, right, at the very early phases, and we're engaging with you now because we don't want to make it to the end and then have an end product. To the question you asked me at the beginning, is this a done deal? We're not there yet. We're getting your input so that the RFP that Purby writes, it's comprehensive, well-rounded, and takes care of your concerns so that we can eventually, hopefully, get proposals that are responsive. So thank you for bearing with me for a few seconds or minutes in saying that. And ma'am, you had a comment.
Yes, hello, this is Ann Ashby from 210 Wellington M. And we really must thank the Clinton administration in 1995 for putting together the Housing for Older Persons Act to take care of the boomers, people who were born 1946 to 1964, and we're all reaping the benefits. However, it would be best if this housing is not senior housing, but affordable. This is affordable because as the boomers are getting older, the need for senior housing is waning. All right, and we really feel the impact of this about 20 years from now. And plus, I don't know if Century Village even wants the competition of another senior housing facility. So it might be best if we have it for affordable housing as opposed to senior. Right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Over here.
Another one there, and we will come to you, sir.
So I just looked up real quickly on discoverpbcgov.org. The median family income for 2022 was 90,000. So 80% of that would be like 72,000. So that's the affordable amount, 72,000 and above.
So I'm going to say
Roughly?
I'm going to say it's a little bit higher, not much. The area median income is established by HUD, Housing and Urban Development Federal Agency. They very recently, I want to say within the last week or so, updated the numbers. In my memory, and please don't hold me to the fire on this one, right?
Okay.
But I'm going to say it's very close to 105, 104, if my $1,000, if my memory is serving me well. So it will be going from 60 to 140% of the area median income and 80% of that AMI. So for affordable, about $80,000, more or less.
Okay.
That's
thank you.
based on family, household. Thank you for the correction, Eric.
Okay.
I have
Okay.
a couple questions. Is there going to be a committee of residents from Century Village that are going to be able to work with the county and/or the developer to make sure that Century Village's needs are met when it comes to this new development?
We will continue to have this channel of open conversation in place, okay? How you coordinate internally goes back to your organization here, right? But what we can represent and commit to is that we will keep communicating through my main point of contact, which I believe is Donald. That will be open. How do you manage it internally? I leave that to Center Village. And I don't know
To
if you want to...
piggyback on Donald, when he said regarding it being for senior facility, it would be best. I mean, because this area is basically, pretty much senior, and the medical buildings are basically more like for elderly, and regarding the affordable housing, considering that Century Village, their associations, let's say their maintenance is going up high, and there are some that cannot afford being here anymore because the maintenance keeps on going up, and they're only up to a certain, income. And they would really need to, find another place. And having affordable housing right in back of Century Village would be nice. And having, in Miami, they had that in, and there was about 90 units, and this was in South Beach on Ocean Drive. Oh, I'm sorry.
Let's focus on what we're talking
Right, what I'm saying is on the, you know, it would be nice, it would stay elderly housing.
Great. That's a great point. Thank
Okay?
you. Yep. Yes, I'll be right there.
Okay.
Finish up her, and
The
then-
second question I had was, are these units going to be for American citizens or legal immigrants or illegal immigrants? Does that come into play at all with your decisions in regards to that? The next question is, how many units are designated for our veterans? We have too many veterans that are homeless, can't turn around and afford a whole lot, where if you're talking any, up to minus 140% of the median income, if veterans are homeless with no income, then they should come before anybody else. The next one is the land. Oh, I thought I was going to answer all and then you could.
Feel free, I'm taking notes, I will give you responses.
Okay,
So,
thank you. If land is kept as commercial within the county, wouldn't it get more property tax versus a low-income housing? Because if I'm not mistaken, the land would turn around and be taxed if it's residential or affordable or low-income housing. It would be, they would get TIF or whatever money back to the developer so that the county wouldn't be collecting as much taxes as it would commercial. So we would be actually losing money, losing jobs if we kept it commercial. Also, is there 1, 2, 3, or studio apartments for bedrooms? And I think I had one more, and then I'm shutting up. When you say define the area that's used for medium income, I heard you say that HUD defines it, but what geographic area does HUD use to determine, do they use some of the higher class incomes or lower incomes when they're figuring these out? I guess I'll shut up now. I know I have more, but I'll leave it as
okay.
that.
So I'm going to start answering your questions from the last one back to the first one, okay? So, yeah. So the logic, I don't work for HUD, right? So I cannot give you the full explanation as to how they determine the area median income, okay? However, they do it for the county. And there is a methodology that comes with it, and they do the same throughout the United States, right? It happens in every state, in every county, within every state. And on an annual basis, if my memory serves me well, they publish the numbers, and then everything that ties to AMI and the funding that HUD provides and so on and so forth gets updated, okay? So it's a recurrent process that is done on a recurrent basis, okay? So that's answer number one. Regarding, are there studios, apartments with 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, we cannot answer that right now because we don't have a design, we don't have a proposal, we have not put this on the street, right? That is part of what a developer that might be interested in developing something on this property will come back and say, here's my proposal. I think I can build as a developer 17 units. And out of those 17, just to use a number for an example, 3 might be studios and 2 might be 2 bedroom, 1 bathroom, right? We don't have that information right now. That is information that we hope to get once we make it to the step of having an advertised RFP. Talking about tax rolls and your question about having the property commercial or not, tax roll and the amount of taxes paid on a property actually ties back to ownership, right? So it's this property right now is in public ownership. The government doesn't tax itself, right? So it's a property that is not contributing to the tax roll. Depending on how we manage this, let us assume it gets disposed, right? Now it goes into the into the private market. So it is the property that then starts producing money into the tax rolls, right? Because it moves away from public and it becomes private. And then the regulations that apply as to how much gets paid depends on the specific of the property use, the ownership, and to give you an example, if it were for sale and I fall under homestead, I may or not need to pay a given amount of taxes, right? So that gets very specific. It's not an answer we can give you right now because it will be a function of what the ultimate development is. But what we can assert right now without doubts is it is in public ownership. We don't tax ourselves as government, right? So right now it's not contributing to the tax rolls. If it goes into the private side of the equation, it will, okay? Going to your prior question as to what type of person will be there. Will this be for Americans, citizens, non-citizens, right? We need to think about this as any private housing on the market, right? It's just we're facilitating the process. And with that I say, the same way you go to buy your property, right? If you have the ability to acquire and you can pay, you're able to acquire the property. If you need to get a loan, there are certain conditions that you need to make, right? And those conditions are not filtered by the county, are filtered by the bank and by the company that is putting it on sale, on the market. What we will control on our end is the ability to say, developer, what we want you to come develop, if you want to put a proposal on the table, is affordable or workforce housing, right? I think your question may have been headed towards other services the county provides under housing and economic development, under vouchers, incentives. That is not part of this scope, okay? And if you have something to add, feel free.
What about the vets?
Administer that. So there's also fair housing regulations that are administered by the federal government. We have nothing to do with those. We're not housing developers. We're not going to be involved in the placement decisions of who gets those housings. That's why we're looking for a private partner that develops housing and gets to decide who occupies those housing to help us. That's just not the business that we're in.
Well, you said
Other people need to speak too. There's many people that
okay,
So-
it was just controversial when they were talking senior housing versus vets.
I just would like, my name is Deborah from Dorchester. I just want to know what's the difference between affordable housing and workforce housing?
It's basically the price range where a developer is able to sell a property. So if you're building a house and you're a developer and you're going to put it on the market, you're going to sell that house at a given value, right? A given price, okay? Let's say for sake of the conversation, $600,000, right? If we say it needs to be affordable, it needs to be in a range where a person that has 80% of the area median income can pay for that property, okay? And this ties back in most instances to a mortgage, right? So when you get a mortgage, a loan from the bank, you are qualified based on your income, right? So if you're earning $60,000, for example, the bank will tell you the most you can afford is $1,000 per month. And all numbers I'm giving are just for sake of an example, okay? I have not made that calculation. So the price range of that property needs to be in such that as a person that is getting a loan, you're able to pay for it within that range, right? So that's what it means. It means that the property is put in the market in such a way that those that earn 80% of the AMI can actually acquire it, okay? Because otherwise, you may actually have a property that is valued more, might be in the 600, but you will never be able to pay for it if your salary is $80,000 a year, right? So we bring that price down so that it becomes within reach for those families that have limited income. That's the logic behind it. It does not affect the quality of the property, right? It needs to be a well-built unit. It's just a matter of what we can afford to pay.
Thank you.
Hello?
Coming back.
Yeah, sir.
No, he can go first.
Hello, my name is Michael Brenner, and I live in Sussex E of Century Village. I'm the president of the Condo Association. I completely agree with Donald about making it senior housing because this is a senior community. And I'm not prejudiced against children, but the last thing we need is more school buses on Okeechobee Boulevard. Additionally, I'd like to emphasize specifically with regard to traffic that West Drive will not be used. You said it wasn't, but you also said it was up for negotiation. I want to make sure that West Drive is not used for this new development. We have enough traffic problems. We have construction of a new traffic signal by the Turnpike exit. We have a mess of traffic at the Haverhill exit with the synagogue. Nothing against Jews, I am a Jew, but that light needs to be configured, and there has to be some provision for entrance into this development.
Let me stop. West Drive is a private road and it's owned by Century Village.
Correct.
Century Village holds the key. Greg has made, Commissioner Weiss has made clear that he doesn't want any traffic on West Drive, and so Century Village can say no traffic on West Drive.
Yes, but I understand that, but there's also a medical building that uses West Drive, and I wanted to make sure that no other things besides that medical building and the UCO office get access, and obviously the Citibank and that healthcare facility as well. But there's enough traffic on West Drive right now.
So you have to stress it out there.
Hey, Mr. Brenner, I have a couple of responses that I think that fit what you're saying. First is,
Still waiting.
UCO has already assigned an attorney to look at what UCO's and Century Village's rights are as far as West Drive. There are some historical easements there that will play into this as it comes in. So we will have some say, frankly, in how that's our road, okay? The other thing is, to you or my comments on senior housing, again, this predicates on that there's going to be housing. The whole point of the Housing for Older Persons Act is that there is a community benefit to senior housing, and the primary benefit to senior housing is safety. And I think we could all agree on that. Staff, if we can express one thing, we feel frankly safer knowing that if there is to be housing, that it is senior housing. That's something that tracks here as well. All right, thank you. Go ahead, Mr. Brenner.
I didn't finish. The other concern I have is the height of the buildings that they're putting in over there. There's enough tall buildings in the area. We don't need 6- and 7-story buildings to accommodate this site. We also have privacy issues. If you put in tall buildings, they're going to be able to look right into Century Village. We already have had many issues in the past of people scaling the fence and getting into Century Village. And we seem to have that under control now, but who knows if it's going to start again. Thank you very much for your time and consideration.
Yes,
Hello.
I just wanted
Yeah.
to say I do agree with Donald that, oh, okay. Oh, okay.
My concern is, right at the beginning, there was one word that was used, perpetuity. Now, perpetuity, what it's supposed to mean and what is happening, we had that in our contract here. We had property that was supposed to be not used for the building of homes and all in perpetuity when the original documents of Century Village. There's now going to be 700 units put into that area. Now, all this that you're saying this is going to be for perpetuity. Where is perpetuity and what does it mean? It means, as far as I'm concerned, that word is not there.
Understood. Let me circle back. I actually have the slide on the presentation where that comment came from, okay? And let me take a step back as to what it means. And the county does this continuously. In fact, we went through that list a few weeks ago. We have about 56 different deals, parcels, right? Deeds, where we have requirements that if ever the property stops being used for the use that the county authorized, that property comes back to the county. It's called a reverter clause, right? But I think what you are addressing based on your experience here, what I gather is your experience here, is a restriction that was put in place that eventually got modified, right? And that's something that obviously we have no control as to what made the experience have been in the past. But the way it works on the real estate side is that you put a restriction as the government, and PERB deals with that on an ongoing basis, on a daily basis. And that restriction stays in place unless you as the grantor, county, say that restriction is going away, right? But as long as that doesn't happen, the restriction remains, and perpetuity means that it will stay in place forever, right? So that consideration as to we're not changing the use usually goes in the deed, and I am telling you right now, we have a number of county deeds that were for properties provided by the county that have active restrictions. And Perby, this is your world. Is there anything you would like to add?
Yeah, we're fine.
So, next question.
I do agree with Donald that it should be for seniors, since we have all senior communities in the area. We have a lot of adult communities, senior retirement communities. I think it would be the perfect choice.
Okay.
That's it.
Thank you. I'm going to do this because you have been more than patient. So.
I just wanted to know when the structural integrity study was done in relationship to Reflection Bay being built. Was it done during or after Reflection Bay? Because I think the building of Reflection Bay would have some impact on the total integrity of the structure of the area, the electric, the sewer. So I'm just curious as to when this study was done.
Okay, I am not familiar with Reflection Bay. Are you?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, our office had nothing to do with that project. That was purely a private entity, private transaction. We weren't involved. Regulatory, county did have oversight, and they review, and the county has what's called concurrency, which means you have to have public facilities in place before development can be approved. Everything is reviewed through the regulatory review and permitting process. Traffic, water, sewer, things that are public utilities are looked at through that point in time. You have to have professional engineering studies, all sorts of documentation to verify it. I heard it earlier, so let me mention this. Electricity, FPL. FPL is not a public company. They are a private entity. They typically require you to invest in upgrading the system if that's what is needed to bring power supply to a site. They don't charge everybody else. They're going to charge whoever is needing the utility to connect that site and bring the development online. If the price is too high, development doesn't happen. So that's really a proprietary decision between the developer and FPL. Same would apply to the self-service comment I heard earlier. That's not a public utility per se. That is a private service provider. So if they see the ability to invest and recoup that money, that's their proprietary decision. But there is nothing that the government can do to restrict or limit development based upon those non-governmental utilities. It's a great question, though.
I'm going to play on what the lady just said regarding Reflection Bay and Gulf's Edge, where I believe a large amount of housing has been approved and will move forward. And that is creating a huge traffic problem. It will create, we're dealing with issues with water and a whole plethora of items that we're dealing with this particular developer. So from my understanding, the county has magically discovered that it owns this piece of property and it wants to monetize it. I get it, but we haven't been making money off of it for a long time. let's do something for the community. Why must we continue to build things where in an area that is already overpopulated? We have huge traffic problems. Let's do something for the people. That's all I've got to say. Don't monetize everything.
Appreciate your comments. I will appreciate as well to have the opportunity to address something you said. This is not an intent, an effort, an initiative to monetize anything. That's not the goal, okay? And we did not came to know we owned this property recently. We knew we owned this property. We had been holding on this property for a number of years, as it said in the first slide, for about 20 years, right, for other county uses. What triggered the analysis? The analysis was triggered by a state-level law that came into effect. That's what forced. It's right there. It's known as the Live Local Act, okay? So that Live Local Act did many things, okay? But one of the things that that act did was to, number one, recognize that throughout Florida, there's a need for housing, right? So from the state level, counties and municipalities and special districts were directed to, we want you to look at every property you have, and we need you to identify which properties can be made available so that developers can come and say, we want to develop something on that property. And that Live Local Act, and I'm certainly not an expert on it, but I'm going to go ahead and share, did many things, and one of the things that it did, and we covered that during the presentation, was that to facilitate construction of housing, it goes to the extent that you don't need to rezone, right? You don't need to change the use. You can actually, on a commercial property, go ahead as a developer and say, I'm doing housing on residential, on a commercial property. And it cuts the time, reduces the time that it will take for a developer to get a project permitted, because it opened doors as to how to expedite the process. So no, this was not an attempt to monetize. That's not our ultimate goal. But as a government, as county, we are required to meet and comply with state law, okay? So that analysis is what triggered this, and we went through the 2,600 PCNs properties we own, and we identified every single use, right? Since there was not assigned use for this one, we had an obligation to bring that to an inventory. So hopefully that addresses your question. Ma'am?
Yeah, I just have a couple comments. One thing is, I think we do need affordable housing in this county. You've got people that come in, I'm going to say the developers come in and they build $100,000 places. And you're just pricing out everybody else that wants to live here in Florida. Secondly, I agree with about almost everybody else here about the traffic. I use that perimeter road to go to and from the library a lot, and I can see where that's going to be jammed up. It's hard enough to get from that one entrance right there by the bank to get on Okeechobee, let alone on West Drive. And then secondly is the security. And it depends on the number of units you have, and I know that's down the road, but it's the security between that property and us. What's going to be put there to secure us even more so than what is now?
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Yeah, May over here. Right here. I have the mic over here. Hi, my name is Minna Dorchester F.
Okay.
I would have to agree with most of the people here on the traffic end of things and the security end of things, and that could just naturally, create fear for people living here, because it's already a major problem, and then hoping that that would be taken into consideration. Just knowing the demographics of the surrounding neighborhood and what something like that would attract, I wouldn't vote on it. I am definitely for the senior housing because it coincides with Century Village, and my opinion would be there would be a less safety issue with that type of housing opposed to other types of housings. And the things that I already know that exist in low-income housing in the areas and what that attracts on a safety level and things like that. I don't even know if assisted living fits into this category, but assisted living facility would be, I think, a perfect place for that, with a park.
Good afternoon. I concern myself when I see the word affordable and crime and young people and the average age of our citizens here. I don't know that they're combinable. I don't know that they come together, and I would concern myself with sale and rental when you use the word affordable. That's all I wanted to say.
Thank you. Just to clarify, like when you talk about workforce housing, that's someone like me, right? I have a wife and 2 kids. My income falls within that range that we just discussed. So it's not Section 8. It's not, people that bring crime. It's just regular people. Also want to make clear that Commissioner Weiss has expressed his preferences on what he'd like to see here. He would like to see senior affordable housing. He would like to see no excess on West Drive. And he'd like to see rental and not for sale. That's what he's expressed. Anyone else?
All income, lower income is the way to go. All right, again, the level of senior housing the need for it is going to wane. All right, and it'd be nice if Florida's not known as the last stop to heaven anyway. So I think just having affordable housing is a terrific idea.
Thank you.
Did you want to ask something, sir?
Hi. Has there been a value put on the property?
We have not assessed the property, no.
Okay. The reason why I'm asking that question is I had talked to Donald previously, and it adjoins Century Village. I don't see why the possibility, I know if it's a competitive bid, we may be outbidded and so forth, but it could be properly taken over by Century Village and run by Century Village, and put additional housing on the property.
For development, anyone that comes to the table and is willing to put an offer can certainly do so.
Well, that's what I'm asking. I mean,
It needs to be
the developers will probably outbid Century Village, but could it be possible that the county or the state of Florida would take into consideration that Century Village wants to take it over?
So under Florida statutes as well and county regulations, when county property is going to be disposed, it needs to be through a competitive process, right? And a public competitive process. There are some exceptions, but I will argue this one will not be one of those. We don't need to compete if we're giving the property to another government entity, for example. In this case, it's a property and Century Village is certainly not a government entity. We will need to compete it. So it will be on Century Village administration to decide that it will like to pursue the possibility of bidding for the property.
This may sound crazy, but I think maybe a nursing home would be a viable solution. We wouldn't have the traffic, and security wouldn't be a problem. So that could be a consideration, and it could be affordable and maybe not workforce, but affordable.
All right, I think thank you all for your questions and comments. Last one. Anyone? Any takers? Going once? Twice? Thank you all for attending.
Thank you.